it follows a school district line, and I believe this is an example of where when certain districts cross county lines, there is a desire to keep them within defined political units, whether it's a voting district, a school district, municipality, those types of things. There are these examples in this plan, another examples in Sublette County with House District 20, and going southward to LaBarge, where one of the communities of interest is the school district that goes down in from Big Piney into LaBarge, and it follows this school district line. On the alternate for this is an example for the same House district in the 60 map, where you can see House District 20 goes northward into Teton County, but it doesn't actually follow any defined political boundaries of sorts. It follows some geographic boundaries, particularly mountain ranges and streams and that sort of thing, but it's not following a defined political unit. And those are different examples of how the plans do or don't try to stay within those political boundaries, and which may or may not increase splits and split ballots for the clerks. And that's where I guess I would like to hand it off to Malcolm Irvin, unless you have questions about how each plan provides more of these examples, or what concerns there are with each of these plans.
So any committee members have any questions on kind of the big picture stuff for this issue, or we just go to Mr. Irvin with the clerks? I guess, Malcolm, it's on you now. So flesh it out a little more if you have anything to offer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my screen so we can see. So the County Clerks Association has worked with Greenwood Mapping, and Rich Greenwood's been an incredible resource for us. He's really compiled all of the data we need. Existing precinct lines, municipal boundaries, special district boundaries, and then each iteration, you can see on this right-hand column, here's the iterations that came out of Corporations Committee. And so each time we were going through each one, what do we have, what do we need? And so, Mr. Chairman, I guess if there were any specific questions about areas, I'd be happy to pull up different district boundaries. The question, as I understood it, was asking the impacts of political subdivisions the way that the lines currently fell. So I have turned on, the orange lines are the House engrossed 62 House district boundaries, and the blue lines are school districts. So you can see, for example, in Carbon County, there was this pocket here. That's one of the corrections we asked to the House engrossed plan. However many people live in this census block, this area. So this one, for example, is 5. There's 5 people that live in that area. That would be a split ballot. So just our change was just to move this legislative boundary in line with the school district boundary. School district boundary, much more difficult to move than asking legislators if they would be willing to move that line a little bit to the west. And so we really treated those special districts like they were static, and worked on the legislative boundaries. And so, Mr. Chairman, I guess if there were any specific questions about districts or areas, I would be happy to show those areas.
So just to be clear, this is on the 62. Do you have one on it's not an engrossed Senate, but the third reading Senate, end of third reading? Could you,
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So here's one example in Sweetwater County. The orange line again is the legislative boundary. It goes around the area of Bear Oil, but this area outside of Bear Oil had 7 people in it. You can see the 6 people in this census block, the 1 person there. And one of the concerns is if a house goes up in an area, these lines are set for 10 years. And so if the house goes up, we've got to take that into account or try to predict what could we navigate before we have to navigate it. So a simple change for Sweetwater was to move this orange line in line with the Carbon School District 1. That's one of the requested changes we've sent on our spreadsheet to you. There's other areas, Mr. Chairman, if you had a specific area you would like to see, but it's important to remember the school district boundaries aren't the only areas. So here's improvement districts are red. So again, we have an improvement district area in northwest Sweetwater County. Of course, Bighorn County is the hotbed of special districts. And I'll show you fire districts. So this gets more complicated. We'll add cemetery districts and conservation districts, healthcare, hospital. So I think, Mr. Chairman, I think my point is illustrated that we're trying to juggle these boundaries. And so when we're asking for these changes, it's not to be difficult. It's not because we have a preference. It's truly to make sure that as best we possibly can fall in line with these static district lines. And so it's a difficult job. The other one is city wards. So we have those to balance. But Mr. Chairman, that's a little example of what we're contending with in our offices.
Right, and so just to be clear, this is about the administration of elections. And the clerks have never taken a position on how many seats, but how those seats fit in with their responsibilities to administer elections. Any questions for the clerks? And of course, we have the deputy clerk from Park County here, who's, I think, done kind of taking the lead for that Bighorn Basin challenge. How's that? Is that the kind way to say it? And so if you have questions specific to the Bighorn Basin, he's probably the go-to. So we'll start with Chairman Zwanitzer, Representative Zwanitzer, and then we'll go to
Thanks,
Senator
Chairman.
Kinski.
I just wanted to check, so each of those, special district boundaries really either have a split precinct or you have a new precinct. And so especially like at Bighorn County, the number of precincts every time we add more lines grows exponentially, really, in any plan where we're cutting another district, in this case, a legislative boundary through that county, creating more precincts, creating smaller numbers of people in each precinct. And I think when we talk about, how is Wyoming different than other places on a lot of these issues with redistricting, it's because we have such a rural nature and sparse population that with all these special districts, you have to create a new precinct with 3 people there, 8 people there. 2 of them are adults in the same party, and you know exactly how they vote in every election. Would that be true?
Mr. Irvin.
And Mr. Chairman, the precincts matter less. That's really the one area that we have some influence ourselves. Split ballots are what would be created. So it would likely increase the number of precincts, absolutely. With certainty, it increases the number of split ballots. In the Bighorn Basin area, and like Mr. Chairman, you identified, this is Hans Odie with the Park County Clerk's Office, and Mr. Odie has really been the Bighorn Basin guru when it comes to mapping. So he's the better one to ask specifics there. But this area that I'm showing, I have the 60-30 plan that came out after the Senate third reading. This area would be a split ballot. So these folks in this area would have Bighorn County School District 3 on their ballot, as well as the representative in House District 28. The other folks that are voting on Bighorn County School District 3 would be voting for House District 26. So if there were, to Chairman Zwanitzer's question, this is an area where we have a number, but again, if this was an area like I showed in Sweetwater County, you had 7 folks, it becomes very easy to identify how they voted. Absolutely. And so that's why these lines, we're just trying to get them to marry up with as many special district boundaries as possible.
Thank you. Senator Kinski, do you have any follow-up on this issue?
Just, I was amazed by that map. I don't know how you'd have a single precinct that didn't have multiple split ballots in it with all that overlay. Almost looks like it'd be easier to design the precinct after you had all the political subdivision lines. Is that possible? I mean, is it possible to somehow just make it easier to design your precincts? I mean, this is a little bit off redistricting, but I'm just trying to figure out how you make sense out of all this.
Mr. Irvin or Mr. Odie, go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct. We wait until redistricting is done in order to divide the county into districts and precincts. And so we do currently wait, because that's one line I did not turn on, were precinct lines. Because again, that's the one area that we have some ability to move those precinct lines. But these blue lines, we can't move. And so in Sheridan County, for example, this area, and this is the Story area, the county clerk in Sheridan County, Ida Shunk, she knew that there were enough in here that it was a split ballot regardless. And so we've programmed that in the past. It can continue because it's been an existing one that didn't cause issues. There are split ballots we have currently, and like I said earlier this morning, we're going to have split ballots no matter what happens. We understand that, especially the Bighorn Basin. Lori Smallwood, their clerk, is the queen of special district elections, and so we will have split ballots. There's no doubt about it. We are just trying to minimize their effect, and at the best we possibly can, minimize the number of splits.
Chairman Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Malcolm, thanks for all your efforts here. Going right back to the Story situation, my understanding is that is, that's nothing but crossing that boundary there, that county boundary, to go get Story into Johnson County. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. This area in Sheridan County for the previous election, I just turned on the precinct boundary. So it appears as though the precinct followed this. Let me turn this off to make it a little easier. It followed that line. So this thin green line is the existing precinct boundary, and it followed, I believe this is I-25. And so this was a programmed split already. And so that's why Clerk Shunk would have made that recommendation when her legislators reached out and asked, how do we accomplish this? That's why she would have made that suggestion. It had been a split before, understood that. And so there's some, obviously we're gonna have to live with them. We know that. And so we're just trying to make sure we provide some help and some recommendations that could clean up some areas that we do have that aren't as palatable, perhaps, as this one.
Okay. Just for the record, that's I-90. And one of the toughest parts of I-90 there is, actually. So if there's more questions, specific questions for areas or anything?
So tell me what is involved in redoing precinct lines, because I was under the impression between the city of Sheridan and the county of Sheridan, it was very difficult to do that. But it sounds like what you do, once we've redistricted, you just start changing precinct lines to make more sense out of them?
Mr. Irvin?
And Mr. Chairman, so once the redistricting bill is done, we will take it back. By the first commissioner meeting in May, so the first Tuesday of May, the county has to be divided into districts and precincts. I don't know this with certainty. I'm wondering if wards became the issue. So the municipalities will set wards within their city boundaries. I'm wondering if the wards were the issue, because we can provide advice similar to this. It's like redistricting for towns, wards. And so we'll provide some advice. Whether it's taken or not, that's a different matter. But I think that perhaps in this situation, Mr. Chairman, wards may be the concerning area. But precincts, we will put likely in line with wards, because that would just make the most sense. Put them in line with wards, and then in the unincorporated areas, that's where we have the ability to move precinct lines at more. There's a reason they follow the paths they do now. They're likely in line with existing special district boundaries. So precincts really aren't the line we're as concerned about in this process.
Mr. Chairman. So is it just a resolution of the county commissioners to change the precincts? Okay, all right.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
And to that point, I think the same with the city wards too. It's 3 readings through a city council. They just did that in Gillette with the population. So Chairman Swanson.
But the difficulty certainly in cities, like mine, where in Sheridan is you really need the same amount of population in each one of those wards to be equal. And so you almost definitely want to draw them along existing special districts or legislative boundaries. Otherwise, you're creating yet another split. And so there is concerns in the larger communities that our lines for districts need to be able to quickly fall in lines with city ward boundaries.
Mr.
Certainly in my
Chairman.
community.
Please, Senator.
I'd just add parenthetically that there was recently an enlightened administration in the city of Sheridan that abolished wards, made it easier for everybody.
Okay, enlightened, as opposed to previous ones? No, so I think this kind of leads us to the place, a lot of these discussions, we've tried to leave it to the clerks and the local communities to figure out what makes sense for them. And that's how I hope we continue to do, even though there may be adjustments that want to be made in some of these communities, the clerks will certainly be a part of that process. So where we are right now with a 62, let's say post Committee of the Whole Senate, 62, and a third reading, end of third reading Senate, 60, just can you quantify how many cleanups that we could do that would be helpful in the administrative of elections? Either give me, a ballpark on 62 and a ballpark on 60, if you know, or if it's indeterminable, you can say that too.
Mr. Chairman, let me, sorry about this. Share my screen. This spreadsheet in my vernacular is probably, well, it is not correct. I called it Senate engrossed. It's after Senate third reading, the plan that came out, the orange boxes are the ones that we're requesting some cleanup. And so there are 15 of 23 counties that did not request any cleanup. And then after Senate Committee of the Whole, out of 23, so this is for 62. (19 of 23) requested no further changes. A couple of the changes that remained in the 62 plan, Campbell requested a couple of zero population census blocks to be moved for two reasons. One, again, if a house were to go in that area in the next 10 years, it would completely isolate them. And two, it created a better boundary to explain to the voter why the district took a jog. If it was a zero population move, it was just easy to say that street's the boundary. And in this case, it was South Gurley. Laramie County had a couple. Sweetwater, this is another zero population. There's one part of the municipality of Rock Springs that I believe it's House District 39 cut through. And so the request was just to take that zero population area of the municipality and add it again if something's built there. So a couple of these changes are zero population. They seem minor, but it's just us trying to be as cautious as possible. The third reading Senate, there's some population that needs to be adjusted in order to prevent isolating voters, disenfranchising, or compromising the secrecy of their ballot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that summary. Any questions from any members? Anything else that you think would be insightful, Mr. Odie, out of the Bighorn Basin, or anything that, I know there's actually the Bighorn Basin in both plans is a little different map. Would you speak to that and give us your impression based on the work and the complexities of the special districts in the Bighorn Basin specifically, which map more closely aligns with what the clerks feel is administratable for election purposes? Mr. Odie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the basin today. The 62 map really fits the basin much better because it gives us some latitude to make some of the changes that we really needed to make to better follow some of our special district lines, especially in Bighorn County. Some in in Park County as well. Washakie and Hot Springs really remain whole regardless, and so there's not a lot of concern there. But what I can tell you with the 60 map is, when we were at minus 6.2%, we were within 19 people from the highest bad deviation to the lowest bad deviation. We had 19 people difference in our 6 districts in the Bighorn Basin. And when you start trying, as you well know, as all of you well know, when you start trying to move 19 people over, several hundred miles, it becomes very difficult. And when you don't have that latitude to move a large block of people or a large block of area to get that population north, for example, when we were looking at coming out of Fremont County in the Valley Plan, trying to get those people into the areas where we needed them and getting them rotated up, essentially, becomes very difficult. And then getting those lines, once you start rotating those people up, getting those lines, it was much more difficult than the 62 plan. 62 gave us several hundred people in each district to move around and to get fit into our areas that we really needed them. Again, Bighorn County is where the problems really lie. And so 62 for the basin area really did work better for us in evaluating those lines and placing them.
Thank you. So just to be clear, we're not talking about relocating the people, just the lines. Anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, thank you. So any questions for Mr. Odie? Questions, Mr. Odie? Chairman Greer, who was also on the committee during the interim, worked with Mr. Odie quite well. I guess Chairman Greer relied on Mr. Odie to help do this, and I'm sure Senator Cooper knows a lot of that discussion too. So anything else for our clerks? Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm so sorry. I forgot this.
Proceed.
And I don't know if this has been a consideration. One of what we called the doomsday scenarios was in the event the Senate did not nest. It's something that we could, if we looked at it and it became exponentially more difficult, because of course that adds another boundary. I showed you half the special districts in Bighorn County. So I have turned on the 62 district House member plan. And if you do 30 Senate districts, each time this gold line and blue line do not follow one another, that's an additional split. And so that's what we've called our doomsday scenario, because it adds another line that we're trying to reconcile with all of the other boundaries within our counties. Right. And so, Mr. Chairman, the policy decision is certainly not ours. We understand that, and I don't want that to be the impression that we think it is. And we really have no opinion, the number of legislators. We just want to make sure the voters at home don't get a ballot, and they're the only one that got that ballot style, because they were in this weird area here where these folks vote or have a split ballot different from the folks around them. And so that's the one thing we're just trying to make sure. So I don't know if it's been a consideration or a discussion topic, but if that's the case of not nesting the 62 and the 30, we are going to need some significant help and time. And so that's I forgot to add that, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I just wanted to add that level of complexity if it had been a consideration.
So members of the committee and for the public, so as some of you know, last week there was some discussion about, well, we'll just take the House position and the Senate position. That's how we work this out. And I specifically asked the clerks to kind of say, okay, it doesn't have to be the specific two positions, but if we just took the two positions on the table right now, what would that look like? And that's why this is presented. It's not to say that it couldn't be looked at. I'm just saying that based on our two positions right now, a House position and a Senate position, one takes the Senate House seats, one takes the Senate seats. This is, you know, the complexity that it adds. So I do appreciate that. I'm sorry you called it the doomsday or the, I don't remember what that was, but anyway.
Maybe that's too dramatic, Mr. Chairman, but
It needs more work? How's that?
well, it needs a little bit more work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you kind of give me an indication if, I'm still confused about the Rock River deal a little bit and the shift to the west. Can you give me an indication on 6231, if Rock River Robbins Ranch was still in 47, what that does on the west end?
Mr. Chairman, that in the 6231 plan that came out of the House, Albany County, all of its districts were within its boundaries and not part of House District 47. In the 60 district plan, Rock River, you can see this area. So this really thin brown line, that's the county line between Carbon and Albany. And this area is the Rock River area that was included with.
Yeah, I understand that. But what does that do on the west end in the 62 plan? Did we ever look at that?
Mr. Chairman, I have not run the numbers. I think that'd be a better question for Mr. Swink. I believe from recollection that 47 was below deviation and could take more. I'm not sure how many more, and I'm not sure what it would do to the deviation in 14 either.
Chairman Zwanitzer, do you want to, you actually went through the committee work and.
And let me preface it by saying,
Clarify for a minute, Rock River is currently in 47 or not in 47?
as of today, it is in 47 for the last 10 years.
Okay.
So under the census, basically Albany County in either plan is within deviation to be their own county and not be cut into or have to go into another county in either the 60 or the 62 plan. And they've been resoundingly loud about not wanting to be in any other county besides Albany. In the 62 plan, that was never concerned because they could easily be their 4 House seats and 2 senators. In the 60 plan, in order to make, again, the 7 counties and 14 districts all be within that 5% deviation, even though some were at 4.99, it required the 215 people in Rock River to be into Carbon County. And really the kind of the inverse of that was because they wanted to keep Smoot as part of Star Valley and not have, as you all know, it's the most southern town in Star Valley before you have to go into Idaho. And so it was most fair to keep that in Star Valley. So again, those 215 people without cutting into Sublette County, but really you could cut those 215 necessary people into Natrona, was also a discussion topic, but we had 2 members of Natrona County on our committee, and so that was not palatable. And so but the existing line is in Rock River, and it was necessary to keep it there to make the 60-30 plan work. And Albany County was never happy with that, which is another reason we went to the 62-31.
All right, any follow-up for our clerk's representatives? Mr. Odie, Mr. Irvin?
Mr. Chairman,
Please proceed.
just wanted to reiterate again how much appreciation I have for you guys. Listened in as often as I could throughout the year, and I know how hard everybody has worked on this. And I want to also say this, we would not have the opportunity to look at 2 different plans today had it not been for the work of the Corporations Committee. And the fact that they vetted these plans throughout the past 6 or 7 months. So grateful for that, Mr. Chairman, but want to thank the clerks especially. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question. I don't know if it's for you, or for
Senator,
the clerks.
please.
It's procedural. So there's
Please.
2 plans on the table, a 60-30 and a 62-31. And as they were making their way through the process, there was this continual work by the clerks to try and make sure anything that needed to be fixed could be brought to the table to be fixed timely. now that we're down to 2 plans, are the clerks continuing to identify the fixes that, you know, if we can fix it without upsetting the apple cart, here's some things we'd like to have happen. Is that process, I hope that my question makes sense. Is that process underway, and how is that information being fed to this committee?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to speak because I was not on the committee, but I did interact with Clerks Association and with local clerks that I dealt with. And actually, there was a point of saturation, I'm going to call it that, and I'm going to speak a little bit, that there were so many changes between meetings on the plans that there was kind of a, get us the base map, and then we can start doing the work. I'll just give you an example. In my country, it was Campbell Hole or Weston Split or Goshen Share. I mean, 3 questions, and every one of those changed the math, entire eastern side of Wyoming. Then you add the complexity of a potential Natrona share, and that changes it again. So I think they did a lot of good work, but there was a lot of, the plan changed, or never settled, and changed a lot, and then very settled at the very end, and it settled on a 62, so I would respectfully say that they put a lot of their energy into getting 62 as clean and as good as they could. The backup plan, which was spoke about, you know, that was the backup plan. So not as much work has been done because some of the decisions have still not been made there, policy decisions. So and I'll let them speak, and I'll let the chairman speak to it. But I think that at this point, the clerks have had more time to vet out 62 because they felt it was the baseline to work with than they have for 60. I'll let Chairman go, or the Chairman of the Corporations Committee, and then to the clerks.
Just 2 additions, Mr. Chairman. And first, it was over 5 months. You can imagine having the committee ask for the clerks to draw different plans and their own local legislators, and then we went, I mean, it was within one vote about 5 meetings, and we went one way, and we went another way, and we asked them to redraw lines. So you can imagine after 5 months of this, by the time you're asking the clerks to draw anything else, and then we sprung the 62 on them last, 3 or 4 weeks before session, and they all committed to do their best, but it was a new, never before tried thing. And the only other thing I would say on first reading in the House, we did go back to what we call the Duncan Amendment, which left the Weston Split Amendment. And the way that amendment went down into Laramie County, I guess it's fair to say we weren't quite ready, because we'd had discussions if Laramie got a full 11 in our boundaries or 10. And the way that amendment came, which legitimately helped the other 5 counties, and perhaps not mine, it caused some chaos on very short notice in my county, and that's why we're still cleaning up. I think Senator Nethercott had an amendment. We had 2 amendments in the House. Just those residual effects on short notice caused my county, and is still causing my county, to go quickly trying to resolve issues
So,
last minute.
Question about
Yeah,
that.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Question, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And to the Chairman of Corporations, do you feel like this southeast corner and the eastern corridor are shined up and ready to put on the Christmas tree now? Is it, how do we look on all that?
Like St. Patrick's Day, but okay, go
So,
ahead.
Mr.
Chairman's
Chairman,
answer.
I think it's very honest to say the map the Senate passed for Laramie County was never discussed by the committee. So for Laramie County's 10 House seats, it was a map, I believe, 2 weeks into this process in September. Our clerk said we could, it was a submission from our clerk that was never actually discussed. So it causes some heartburn for Laramie County legislators going, we don't even know where this map came from, but we never discussed it. That being said, I have talked to several senators. We continue to clean up some things in Laramie County, and I do believe, depending if this committee goes back to a 62 plan, we have agreement from a large majority, at least 13 of our 15, on a 62 plan that could work a little better for the 2 Senate no votes and our no vote in the House.
Please follow up.
Thank you. That's still a little unclear where this map came from that threw Laramie County into disarray, but it sounds like if we were to pursue 6231, that we could get there in this southeast corner.
Chairman.
I strongly agree with that. As I'm sure you know, many of the conversations were, do we draw Laramie County with only 10 House seats at 4.8% deviation above, even though we're the fastest growing area of the state? Or do we demand an 11 seat and take that from somewhere else in the state, which causes hard feelings? We tried many times to share with Goshen or Platt. Goshen resoundingly many times said, don't cut into us, and so we didn't really figure out where we were ending up until really on the first reading of the House. And so I think we've got it resolved in the 62 plan. We also have a backup if it stays at 60-30. We can certainly try that, but I think all the Laramie County people, save two that I haven't discussed with, would prefer the 62 plan at this point.
Mr. Chairman, one
Please,
more.
please.
One more. Just thank you for the ability to converse a little bit on this. So as it worked its way through the House, any other hot spots, any other things that came up over there that maybe the Senate's not aware of, or that we still might have issues with or need to clean up? Or we did hear about Laramie County a little bit. You know, beyond that, I'll just be frank and earnest. The Senate has 3 or 4 things that need to be considered if we were to work one over the other. So what else can you tell me about 6231?
I could, Mr. Chairman. And can we put the 62 plan back up on the screen?
Please.
And so in trying to consider all of the issues that are out there, no into a 62 plan, we basically looked, there's 3 major points of growth in the state. One is in North Lincoln County, which grew heavily, but due to the loss in Sublette County, it kind of equaled out in drawing that part of the state. And so really the 2 largest areas of growth were in eastern Casper and eastern Cheyenne. And so looking at what a 6231 plan would do, those 2 seats are generally added around those 2 areas of the state. To keep all the Senate nestings in place to impact the least amount of senators in creating a new Senate district, we basically took Platte County, now in, I'll just say Senator Boner's district, moved that into Laramie County, and then that extra House seat in eastern Casper would be combined with Senator Boner. And so the issue in this current election cycle being an odd-numbered year of 2022, all of the even number senators run. And so if we're creating a 31st Senate district, it's an odd number. And so you have to have someone run in one of those. We basically left every nesting the same besides 2 senators. One was Senator Boner in Converse County, the other was Senator Bouchard in Laramie County. And so as I said, you combine Laramie with Platte, and then the Converse and the Trona, one of them has to run in Senate District 31, and they're both in even numbers right now. And so I'd say due to a large number of factors, not least of which being Senator Boner is on the committee, Laramie County took Senate District 31 as a new Platte Eastern Laramie County district, which would then necessitate one of the 30 senators being in a district that was up for election, even though he is guaranteed a 4-year term. And so that had to happen somewhere in the state, and that individual will have, and a 6231 plan.
So I would say, Mr. Chairman, so maybe that's where the committee was. That doesn't mean where this conference has to go. This conference can respect the fact that 2 legislators both may not have to run, and we get out of a little bit of a sink because they were already elected for a 4-year term and they're halfway through it. So we can talk through that if we're at 62. We can adjust that. Okay.
So-
If it is in the bill, I don't know where it ended up, but I'm just, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, really appreciate that, because that's come to us in bits and pieces. Also, very intrigued by your comments with regard to Lincoln County. Needless to say, we're very interested in that part of the world. Our Senate president resides there, and we obviously want to make sure that we don't mess up a boundary that might affect the Senate president. So what can you tell me about Lincoln County? You had a comment there. Any one of you,
Please,
would-
Mr.
that
Chairman.
would be helpful for me to
Just
catch.
the comment is, actually, the fastest growing area of the state was really North Lincoln County. But Sublette County next door did lose about 10% of their population. And so as we worked on that area of the state, it didn't quite balance out to neutral, but the way the current districts and the current nestings were situated, it basically evened out with the least amount of disruption from the current districts. As you'll see, Star Valley in the 62 plan is still basically one district. We heard that loud and clear from many legislators that Star Valley really should be one legislative district. Certainly, the 62 plan helped out the gentleman next to me who represents Sublette County, and then we found it easiest to go into Lincoln in that area because all of the LaBarge, Calpet area, that school district all goes into Sublette County for school. And so it looks a little odd, as Representative Clippers can attest to, but that really is a political subdivision school district boundary that we all believe best aligned with Sublette County. And so, you know, on balance for that whole area, it really balanced out to work really well in the 62 plan to accomplish kind of a variety of desires and pinch points that we were able to resolve in going to 6231.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And and I guess this is a question for Michael Swank. I would assume that the 62 and the 60 are fairly similar in those two districts. That'd be 22 and, what is it, 21, 22?
Mr. Chairman, you are correct. They're not identical, but they're very similar.
What is the differences between the two?
Mr. Chairman, the differences are mainly in Teton County, but most of this between House District 21 and 22 in Lincoln County are almost identical.
And what are the differences between 22 and on the north side? So just go up there, blow it up, and let's see what the difference is. And how much population is in that area?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know off the top of my head. I understand that in actually I can bring up the 60 plan. As you can see, this right down here is at the north end of House District 21 is fairly similar to what's at the north end of House District 21 in the 62 plan. And in the 60 plan, it's close, it's similar, but one of the differences is that in the 60 plan, Sublette has to go into Teton County. So that takes a population from House District 23, which then impacts 22 and 16 over toward Jackson. Correct. And Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
I did want to respond to Senator Kinsey's question. After each reading in both the House and the Senate, I sent all geographic files to the clerk. So they've reviewed every iteration of the maps throughout both this House and Senate's process.
And Mr. Chairman,
Please.
so whatever fix-its, tweaks, adjustments, we've got those on that, we know what those are.
Mr. Chairman, I do have, I think, most everything for the 62. The 60, I do not have all of them, or I haven't processed through all of them yet. But the spreadsheets that Malcolm provided are the basis for those changes.
Mr. Chairman, so what I want to avoid is if you put the word out, you know, any adjustments they feel we can't guarantee they'll all happen, of course, but we don't want to get ready to sign the enrolled act and have one county go, oh, wait a minute, I need to adjust just a small minor adjustment here.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
and Senator Kinsey, I appreciate that very much. I sent to each of you a spreadsheet. So once the Senate plan came out and the House plan, we sent out a spreadsheet to each county clerk asking the two plans, what would you like to have, or what would your request be to have changed? And so each of those county clerks has looked at them, and Senator Kinsey's question was whether that was ongoing. I actually did receive one more piece of input from Albany County at lunch today, and so I've updated that. I'll send it out again, but we are actively looking, but this spreadsheet should be it, and each of those counties is looking just a last hoorah. But Mr. Chairman, I've sent that spreadsheet, and that should detail, if it's not every change, then, and our county clerks know that there's a timeline and it's tight, and so they've worked very hard to fit this in quickly. And so that's why Albany's came up, because they got the big changes out and then asked for a couple pockets to be addressed as well. So that's why thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm intrigued by, I'd like to go back, if I can, to the 6231 plan on northern. Go ahead, please. Yeah, sorry.
Just quickly finish up on this. So the little spike you see coming off 21 into 22, that was to keep Star Valley Ranch whole. So Star Valley Ranches would be on the 22 side of the slate. And then the one question I had for Michael Swank was, and maybe you can explain, in District 22, what's the population split between Lincoln County and Teton County, both in the 60 and the 62?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe in both of them, it favors Lincoln County in terms of population numbers. It's about 5,000, 5,500 Lincoln County, and then 3,500 to 4,000 in Teton County.
Senator Kinski?
If we can go to 6231, and I wanted to follow up because I was intrigued by, I wasn't sure where Representative Summers was going, but I wanted to follow up on it a little bit. 6231, northern, it's Senate District 16 to me. I don't know House districts, which,
Okay.
so Senate District 16 is,
That is House District 21 and 22.
okay. And so show me which one is 21, 22.
21 is Star Valley,
Okay,
and then 22 is basically Alpine and Southwest Teton County.
okay, so let's go up and look at Southwest Teton County. Okay. And I can't read from here. Where's the town of Jackson?
Jackson is where my cursor is, and that is
Okay.
House District 16. And then House District 22 goes through Wilson, south of Jackson County area, and then Hoback Junction and south.
Okay, so when you talk about a community of interest, you've got a Star Valley House seat tumbling over into Teton County. That's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, that's what we have now, I think, so. All right, any further questions for our clerk's representatives? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so we got about 8 minutes. So, Mr. Co-Chairman, it seems like we're not gonna have enough time to get to these findings, but we have 2 sets of findings. I'm actually gonna hand out a second one that, when I visited with the director, he said, I'm continuing to refine something. Obviously, they're in a little different format, but refine something that was more specific maybe to the Sheridan Johnson issue broadly. So we don't have to work them through now, but at least you'll have both copies we can talk about them the next time we meet. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd like to be able to give our clerks and our staff some direction by the end of this day. So do we want to come together again upon adjournment, or just set a time certain and come together? And I think we need to, give some direction. Do we want to continue work on 62? Do we want to, I think we need to. Or do we want to make a motion now and we just go that direction? And then the clerks can be gathering up their things by then. Mr. Chairman, what are your
Mr.
thoughts?
Chairman, just a couple of things. First, appreciate your willingness to work with the Senate. We're inclined to try to work the 62 plan. If you will all work with us as we go forward, we'd like to try to, really not that many concerns, but a couple of areas we'd love to visit with you about. I would think that let's work that plan and see where we can get that plan to. If we can't get that to the finish line in the minds of all 6 of us, then we can always tumble back over and look at the other plan. But I would say later on today, the only concern I have is we're both working committee of the whole last day. We're going to go late, I'm sure, on both sides. And, well, come to think of it, we are just working House bills. So
Mr. Chairman.
I don't know, go ahead.
Senator Kinski.
We've talked amongst ourselves. We got to pick something to bring to the table and start working on. And, when we heard you say that we think we've got some latitude. So first, I have asked our clerk to go back and look at 6231 with fresh eyes, because we didn't work it as hard as we could have, because it came on so fast. And so we're trying to see, we know we're gonna have deviation. We're trying to see if we can minimize that deviation as much as possible in a way that's satisfactory to the delegation. So she asked for the day to be able to put that together. And then with our own folks, you know, when we take it back to the body, Senator Landon and Senator Cooper and I don't want to, if we're going to stand up for 6231, we don't want to have somebody come up and say, oh, by the way, you know, whatever the oh, by the way is, we want to know about it now. And so we're trying to work our floor a little bit there so that we can flesh that out. So I don't want to represent for the chairman, but we'd like to maybe bring something a little bit more definitive to the table tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but I think, I mean, we should set an expectation for our clerks and for our staff that our direction, and I think I've heard it now, our direction is to proceed with, like we're going to, with a 6231,
See if
and
we
then communities, you want to make a motion to proceed?
Move that Mr. Chairman, I would move that we work towards the 6231 plan.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? From the House side, would the Senate like to second that motion?
No, Senator Cooper second.
So we have a motion, Summers, Senator Cooper second, that we we work on the 62 plan that focuses the efforts of our clerks, our staff on that. And then would we like some kind of timeline so that people that want to bring things to the floor, which by the way, Clerk Thompson is my first cousin. But anyway, talk to my, no, she'll tell me about it. And do we want to set a timeline so we can have both the minor adjustments that the clerks may want and maybe more global or bigger adjustments? Do we want to set a timeline so that Mr. Swank has that available to us at a particular time so we can reconvene?
I'll tell you what, I'd have to defer to somebody that has more, me and Ed are just as green as grass on this deal. You guys have a better idea how.
I'm hopeful
whether or
for,
not it is.
I'm hopeful for green grass this year, but.
Well, yeah. This
Mr.
last
Chairman?
week should have helped. Mr. Chairman, it feels like to me through this afternoon and this evening, we ought to be able to get some information back from people.
Yeah.
And I would suggest maybe tomorrow morning, is when we get back together and go to work on this thing. In the meantime, you're right, the clerks and our staff know that we're headed in that direction. We're going to try to get it shined up, and we'll do that on the Senate side.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, and to our good Senate colleagues, I just ask, you know, when you're in a certain area where there's some House districts, try to work with those folks as well, so
Absolutely.
we
don't-
kinda
We don't want any
come
surprises.
together on that.
So before we vote, I do, just so that I don't get any people on our floor exercise, this is all with the caveat that we've got to work out something that's mutually agreeable, but we're going to start on this.
Right, and I think that the one thing I think we need to do within this 62 is, and I think this is one of the caveats, is we are willing to be out of deviation for Johnson and Sheridan counties by keeping that school district in, or should we start at a different place? Because you've made a request to your clerk at 6231. I just want to understand, is that within the keeping Sheridan Johnson whole, or is that within?
Good question, Mr. Chairman. It's keeping it whole.
Thank you.
It's trying to make sure that we can, whatever the deviation is, that it's as small as possible.
Okay, thank you. So I think that. So everybody has an understanding. We're starting with 62. Everybody inputs what they want to, or through either their clerks to the LSO. And if the clerks are doing this on behalf of legislators, let's get that to Mr. Swank. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9 o'clock and consider what's been brought to us and then work from that. Is that acceptable? So all those in favor of the motion, 62, keeping Sheridan Johnson whole, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion adopted. Thank you, everybody. We will come back. Mr. Swank, my apologies.
I just wanted to notify the committee, this room will be taken tomorrow morning, so we will have a different room.
Mr. Chairman, I think we'll put you in 113.
We'll be in room 113 for the public, 113 tomorrow at 9 o'clock. This is going to be a continuation, so just an announcement on the floor is adequate. Thank you.